Hi, it's Thursday, June 26th, 2025. That's not part of the cognitive test, fortunately. That would have been an easy one. It's been a while since I have seen you. It's been a year since I have gone ahead and recorded a show. And I have mentioned in past shows for those who had followed my Rumble account and watched videos in the past, always knew that I had said in the videos that one day I'm just going to disappear. And that was a strategy because I knew that I would eventually need a break because I've been working really, really hard and I needed a period of time to just reflect on a lot of what I have done and prepare for the things in the future. And what inspired me to actually come back and record this video to share with you was a note that I received from in on True Social from A Spy Anon. That's it. I wanted to make sure because so many people in the mainstream media call it QAnon, and it's wrong. There's Q, which is a security clearance and an operation for those in the know. And then there are anons, people who read the drops and see the clues that is presented by the players in the Q team. So those obviously who don't know anything about Q or such, that's cool because this video really isn't about Q at all. Nothing to do with it. Has to do with the question that was asked by Spy Q Anon. That's his handle. Well, I'm not sure his handle. That was his name. You know, your name is bigger than your handle. So people want to know I'm Dr. Jeffrey Horlick, but I'm Mission Command on True Social, and I love True Social. But let me preface to say, I'm a stockholder, so I that's one reason that I love it. But there are many reasons that I love it, and I'm really happy that Devin Nunes is running up this company. I've read Devin Nunes's book. Those who don't know, Devin actually has had wrote two books. I brought Countdown to Socialism, and I actually kind of got to know him a little bit through a mutual friend, Keith Cronensberg, who owns Core Daddy's, the restaurant out in California that's very famous. He came down to North Carolina for the Great Awakening show where I had a booth for the first time. And it was at that show he introduced himself and I introduced we became friends. We got to know each other. And has his restaurant, I believe, right adjoining or very, very close to Devin Nunes's great winery, his vineyard and winery, and they're very, very, very close. And I went to the show because I love to learn and educate myself, and I do it by reading a lot and obviously practical experience as well. So I brought with me to the show books of people who I thought might be going to the show, who might be able to sign my books and maybe talk for a little bit. There were a few people like Cash Patel that I wanted to talk to. And by the way, since I knew that I was going to mention his name, uh, I took out his book because when I will promote this one, all right, American Gangsters, even though the book had come out 2.5 years ago, I believe that it was really funny. The way Cash writes is unique, and his willingness to be open about his family and his past. I enjoy nonfictions. I said to my mother once, my mother, used to read a book a day, a romance novel every single day. And I said to her one day when I was probably 8, 9 years old, that if you were to, instead of reading a romance novel every day, you went ahead and you read books on medicine and other things, you might be able to help others. And just, but I decided that I would go ahead and my mother, I said to her, I said, "Can you believe how smart you would be?" And but back then, when you're young, you think doctors, lawyers, they're the smartest people. It's only later when you become mature that you realize not all doctors and not all lawyers and not all teachers, et cetera, are uh, are smart and have good common sense. And I think that you all see that in real life. Unfortunately, there are people that have these predilections that are run the gamut from evil to, really funny. And I haven't met um, Cash personally. I was hoping at this show to meet him, but I had heard that he was going right to. When I got to the show, I heard he wouldn't be attending because he had to go to Washington, D.C. This was before he was brought in, excuse me, as the FBI director because I wanted to compliment him on his fun read. Um, I took my mother's. I once when I said this had this conversation with my mother about the books. Um, she said, "Jeff, there, there's a list, and I'll get it for you of 100 books. If you read these 100 books, it's the equivalent of having a doctorate." And she gave me the list, and it took me 2 years, and I finished all the books. And this was when I was like 13, so 14. It took me about 2 years back then, two, 34. Probably by the time I was 15, I was done with the list of the 100. And they were all different topics. I mean, really amazing. And their list constantly changed. So my advice to my mother was to educate yourself to make the world a better place because that's what I wanted to do. And what I've been trying to do, and what I'm going to continue to strive to do, is to make the world a better place for everyone. And if you ever look up the name Jeffrey, Jeffrey, and you look up the meaning of the word, like you see, I'm supposed to be the god of peace, the ruler of peace, similar to how like Trump. It was if you look up the name Donald Trump, you look up the specific meaning and it matches exactly. When you look up my name, Jeffrey Horlick, and you even put it in a gematria calculator, it's astonishing when I did it, when I saw the results. But I'm not making the video completely about me, but I figured that since I'm going to be talking about water and health, that I should give you some bona fides as to who I am, because for the first time, many of you are watching me and want to know, okay, you're not going to go to LinkedIn or you don't belong to LinkedIn, so you're not going to click on my profile and spend all the time reading. So I'm going to kind of give you an abridged version of who I am first, and we'll get into the water and answer his question. And his question was simple. He wanted to know where he could find the video of distilling water and the deal with it, distilled water. And I have done a lot of shows, and I respond after giving it really a little bit of thought. I said, you know what? It's been a year since I've done a show, and I would have to go through and not I would have to go through a few videos to actually find the video that contained that. So I decided to make this relatively short video and answer that question and maybe give a couple of other things that are interesting health tips be- because I'm living proof that number one, you don't need a college degree to be successful. And I'm living proof of that. I've been very successful in uh, two businesses. One is uh, in marketing and sales from my father's side. My father, who's pictured over my left shoulder, where's my father? There's my dad. He just turned 89, April 6th, and he and my mom live about 10 miles from me. And my decision to come down to live here in Florida, South Florida, was to be near them as they aged so that I could care for them. Now, that was my not a long term plan because the candy and confectionery business that I was in for 21 years of my life. I was born into the business. My father is extremely successful as a can was I should say, not that he's past tense, but he's retired from that business, as am I closed the business probably around 2009, but through the years, it started in 1927, and we started. My late great uncle, who was also in the Candy Hall of Fame, if I didn't mention, my father and my late great uncle are in that Hall of Fame of Hershey. My late great uncle Stanley Marks was the first person as a broker, which when I say marketing, my late great uncle started a brokerage firm, which he represented confectionery manufacturers, but starting in 1927. And he got into the candy business because he was working for his uncle, who had a candy company in Queens, yes. And he went ahead and he was a missionary salesperson after learning the business of making boxed chocolates, sweeping the floor, doing all the menial tasks. Then, for a brief period of time, he was successful selling war bonds before that. Then he worked for his uncle in the candy business, and he became a missionary salesperson. And it should have been, he got accepted by his uncle, not just because he was his nephew, but because he sold so many war bonds. He was really good. So he naturally fit into the candy business, worked in this candy factory, learning how they box chocolates, make it, and sell it. And so eventually, his uncle closed the business in his factory, and my late great uncle Stanley started his own brokerage company because being a missionary salesperson for his uncle, he would travel all around the five boroughs of New York and the entire state of New Jersey selling the chalk box chocolates of his uncle. Along the way, making lots of new relationships with wholesale distributors and distributors of all sorts. As times progress since 1927, the way products get to market have changed, and they will continue to change in the future. So he opened the Stanley Marks Company, and he started representing a company back then called the H.B. Reese Company out of Pennsylvania. And he started repping them at the beginning, as well as two or three other companies that no longer exist. Just 1927 is a long time, and some of these small factories that made it was Keppels in Pennsylvania, for example. They made chocolate marshmallow twists, and they made the best. You could put them in the freezer; they'd crack just like a Charleston Chew. You could crack it. We started then too. We started Willy Wonka. And I personally, Sport Chick, I put it up over there just to remember to say in the bona fides of who I am, my successes in building businesses, because I went into the Stanley Marks Company as an employee first before eventually becoming the chief executive officer. And I became the chief executive officer because I brought in new customers that were big customers that weren't traditionally purchasing. And I was also starting brands like Sport Shake and another brand, Chupa Chups. But the way I learned was by living in my father's home, and he being an E3 sergeant in the Korean War had a very strict personality, a very, very strict guy. And you didn't want to mess with him. And as a child, he was a loving dad. And absolutely, I'm very grateful. I could have been stuck with someone who was drunk or a drug addict, or been in prison or done nefarious things. And I not going with 89. He's never been arrested and done great things. And yours truly, uh, same thing. Never been arrested. I don't drink. I don't smoke, and it's just my preference. And again, more bona fides. Who am I? I'm also a little bit unusual. First, I'm not unusual because I have a 25-year-old son who lives in my home and works, saving his money. Uh, I'm unusual in the sense that I prefer to be by myself for living. And that's because I want to live an extremely long life. We all have to set goals. And every time I set a goal for myself, when I tend to achieve it. Most times I achieve it. And I've been very fortunate in so far with health. And that's because I make a concentrated effort to understand how to be healthy. And it is not easy to do that. And you have to make huge sacrifices. For me, to achieve my objective of living to a certain age, it's just, I can't imagine a person, a woman, a significant other living with me and distracting me from the things that I love to do. And again, I've had so much success in the building of brands and in real estate. Now we'll switch to mom. Mom is 5 years younger than my dad, and her family was in the real estate business, real estate property managers and developers. We would develop, rehabilitate buildings that were dilapidated and uninhabitable that were owned by the city of New York because no taxes and no people lived in them, and they were boarded up. No one could live in them. So my mother's family wasn't always in the real estate business. They were actually loan sharks. Uh, they when they started coming to this country during World War I, they they went into what's called back then the installment, maybe it's called the installment business, not loan sharking, but the type of interest rates they got back then, there was no controls. They would be considered, I guess, loan sharks. And they didn't just give what they would do is my great uncle Dave came here, settled in Brooklyn, and I didn't know any of my grandparents. So these are stories that I have heard from my mother and my father. His side, I'm not even going to go that way, except for the people that I give clips. I have an old Disney, the original Disney cartoon that let's stay with. I want to stay on one topic at a time. Okay, so back to the confectionery and getting out of that. So I did all of those brands, but eventually, when I say brands, I just mentioned Sport Shake. But what was very significant was we represented Willy Wonka, and the Willy Wonka Candy Company came about uh, because my late great uncle started representing a company out in Salt Lake City, Utah, way back in the 30s, called Frizola with an F, Frizola Company. And this was a guy who went ahead and he was a soda jerk, and he decided he had this citric acid and sugar mixture, which he would add to a certain drink that people loved. And eventually he saw that his son and other people would like to just eat the raw powder that he mixed together to put in the sodas. And hence, Frizzola came up with their first brand, Lickamade. And then eventually they decided to put this Lickamade, which came in a little package, like a flappable package. You open it up, it was a penny, and you pour it out. It had color, and it was sugar, basically sugar flavored water with a little citric acid. So there was a tang to it. And that eventually molded into other products like Pixie Sticks. So instead of putting it in a pack, his son had the neat idea, why don't we take a colored straw, put the powder in this, and crimp it and sell that. And we could sell it, have a new product we'll call Pixie Sticks. So they developed that. And all along the way, that small company, Frizzola, couldn't afford back in 1930 an entire sales force across the United States to show his products and sell his products to the East Coast or the Midwest. You would have to hire tons of people and the payroll would be huge. And if you were to have to travel, so back then they were brokers in every industry, but there aren't like that today. Obviously, things change as time goes on, just like coal. Uh, Carts used to be a big thing. You have horse-drawn coal carts that would come to your house and deliver coal or ice. All those businesses that delivered the ice and all the companies that delivered the coal to your house, there they go. And the need for the brokers was very important back in the 30s, 40s for a very, very long time. It's only become recent with the modern technology where you have computers and you can interface with people directly, as well as you would have retailers disappearing. You had so many mom and pop corner stationery stores, and you would have delis. You still have delis and pizzerias, but uh, you didn't have big supermarkets and you didn't have giant price clubs and Costco's or Amazon's. You went to your local store, and local stores got their supplies from a local wholesaler. And wholesalers would obviously sell them cases of or boxes of candy. They bring it back to their store, open it up, and sell it along with whatever else they would put into their small grocery stores. I think the best example of what I'm referring to, small grocery stores, family owned, would be what today you call bodegas, where you could find in the inner cities of most cities in New York, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island. You could hear my accent. And you could find these in many states where you have these bodegas, very small, where supermarkets generally don't want to move into because either the rent's expensive, there's too much pilferage, or for whatever reasons. These bodegas do very well. And also, some people like myself, I'm old fashioned. I like to deal one on one with people more so than uh, uh, with like with a family business is what I'm trying to say. So so my I got involved in real estate first before going into candy. So I got involved in the real estate when I was 19, 20. I did go to many colleges because if you go to my LinkedIn, you will see I've attended, no joke, probably 10 universities, but never with the objective of ever wanting a degree. I never went to these colleges for a very specific program, uh, with the exception of two, and I'll mention them in a second. I went to these colleges because I wanted to learn certain things that I they had great programs about that I couldn't learn from any specific book. Again, things have changed over my life. So the way I'm able to get information and you're able to get information is much different today than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago. So I was born in 1967, January, late January. I am a Aquarius. So if you take my name, Jeffrey Horlick, and you look at Aquarius, read what an Aquarius is, it's like, oh my God, it's the same thing. Again, with the Junichi calculator, you put it together, it all matches everything. I'm supposed to not. I'm supposed to bring peace and heal the world. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I continue to educate myself, learning to help people. And what I'm understanding, my past year off is to catch up on technology because I have been making shows talking about water, and every time I learned something new, I would do a show, whether it was about methylene. I did a show on methylene blue, on ozone, the benefits and all of that. After I'd read books and study it and find out, all about it. And um, today, I'm finding it important to me to understand how fintech, financial technologies work. And I'm going to give a disclaimer. I own Tesla stock too. Now, I go ahead and I read a lot. I read Elon Musk's book, and it was fascinating because anytime someone had a bad thing to say about him, I read his book. It came out 2 years ago. I think I have it right here. I just want to give you the author. Normally, I'm with the authors right over there. Here it is. Yeah, Walter Isaacson. Walter Isaacson's a great writer. He did the one from the banking, the creature from Jekyll Island. I believe he did that, and did he do World Without Cancer? I think he did World Without Cancer too. No, that would no, I'm mixing them up. Edward G. Griffin did World Without Cancer. Um, so I I read a lot. I like my mom. Easily, I'm not boasting. I I'm very, very, very smart. Besides from all the reading, and I'm unusual. I'm a very unusual individual. Not that you could ever notice when we're together. I am amazing when we're together or in groups. But privately, I'm an unusual person. And I think I kind of like the quirkiness of what an Aquarian is. And I go with it because I like to live this lifestyle. But I also have a genetic condition. I have this incredible mutation of my genes. I have 35. Okay. I don't have 36. I'm sorry. I have 45, not 46 like all of you. You get 23 chromosomes from your mom, 23 chromosomes from your dad, and then you get a sex hormone, either X or Y. When everything they combine, you have 46. Well, it's not that I'm lacking a set of chromosomes. That material's there. It just decided to mutate on to another pair. So I have a pair of three, one really, really long one. And I think that for whatever reason affects me. I've been keeping diaries and journals ever since I was very young. And I didn't learn about this, but I still enter the information that I learned in journals. But I didn't know this. They knew I was extremely smart because they gave me an IQ test. And the reason they gave me an IQ test at a very young age was because I wasn't following the curriculum that was being taught with me because it didn't interest me. That's the reason why I never went to college to become a doctor or a lawyer. I figured I could just read the books and I could learn if I want to become a doctor. And then eventually I read all the books. I didn't become a doctor from reading all the books, but I did uncover some tremendous things, and I'll get into that in this video. And I'll share with you. So I went into the real estate business first after going out to Arizona State. Now, I said I went to two schools where I actually took programs. Number one was Nassau Community College. That was the first college I attended. I was a great athlete. I'm tall. I'm 6'3", and when I graduated high school, I was 210 pounds. So they wanted to recruit me as a lineman and build me up. I did not. I preferred to play linebacker and or fullback, and so I went to Nassau Community to do two things. One was to see how good my football skills were back in 1985 at the college level. The best junior college at that time was Nassau Community College, and it happened to be on Long Island where I lived, and I grew up in what's called the Five Towns. I graduated from a high school called Hewlett High School in an exclusive area that above Hewlett Harbor, and maybe some of you, I'm throwing names, Lawrence and such. So I go there so that I could get the top good grades, taking classes that I liked, but I also had to follow their curriculum. They wanted you to take this, and this if you want to go. So I took all those classes and I did very, very good. And I did very, very well because I wanted to be able to transfer to the best Division I college football program in the world. And at that time, it was Arizona State. And I didn't need super high grades to get into Arizona State, but I received football scholarships out of high school to play on some Division I AA schools. But I wanted to go to Division I. I felt that I was better, and I felt that if I worked hard, that I could make it. And actually, it's because a couple of people, especially one specific gym teacher, I forget his name, but it's not important. He said to me, he was actually, this is interesting. Now it's coming back to me. Not his name, but he was actually at Nassau Community College as one of the football coaches. He wasn't the head coach, but he was one of the football coaches. And I think I know I shocked him once I got there because uh, I had built myself up to about 220 pounds, maybe 225. And to be quite frank, I don't, from like, I graduated high school at 210 pounds. I weigh this morning 214, 215. I think it was like varying like that. I always maintain the same basic weight. I don't think it's healthy to go way too up, way too down. And again, there was a period of time where I started noticing myself getting a little too heavy. So I started keeping a separate diary that just had to do with exercise and eating, because I discovered in my education that there's this thing called uh, food amnesia. There's a real thing, food amnesia. People don't truly, not all people, but some people just don't realize how much they're actually eating throughout a day, in my case, until I started writing everything down. And after a couple of weeks, I also did this along with a pedometer because I was curious I want to live for a very, very long life. So I go ahead and I kept the diary and I cut out, I read and I learned about proper nutrition. I guess the theme is reading's really good for you. And when it came to the water, it's not like you could go ahead and buy a book on water that tells you all of the things that are good. But I'm going to tell you the things that bother me and scare me about water. One is it's out of my control. And when I have done experiments, I have discovered that pathogens and particulates of all sorts enter our public water systems. And I'm gonna, I want to like jump. I have some photos I would like to share with you to kind of demonstrate. I th- and I also, I guess I'm not at that time. You're gonna when I share my screen, I have it open to a bunch of pictures. And I'll explain the water first, and then let's see where that takes us. Now, I've never recorded a video in which I had gone ahead and shared a screen and introduced pictures and the such. So this is a first for me. So let's start with water. Okay, is a water pipe that brings water to residential buildings, underground pipes. These pipes are spread throughout our entire country, and it's gross. And I'm going to stop sharing it because you get the idea. And I'm going to go back because uh, if hypothetically you want to hurt a lot of people, which they've done in wars in the past, if you read from ancient wars, they would hurl dead bodies into the to the enemy. The enemy would take dead bodies, and that was the start of chemical warfare, and they would dump them into the decaying bodies of soldiers or whatever. They throw them into the water supply and get everyone sick, and they didn't have good medicine, and people died from that stuff. So, so water. I've always been I've always known that water was something inherently. I just dealt. Look, again, here it comes. I'm an Aquarius. What is the Aquarius? I'm a water bearer. Okay, that's what. So I've always had an affinity, and I look forward to studying it more. And that's because there's amazing things we could do with water that haven't been done yet. And I'm experimenting because water actually has memory. Some of you out there probably have seen videos where you could freeze certain ice crystals, and when you play certain music to the water, then take a drop, freeze it, and then play a very soothing, a certain frequency, you get a beautiful shaped frozen like snowflake. But then you go ahead and you play a out of tune uh, uh, frequency and something like beating hard that's bad. It forms a mouse shape. You do the same freeze. It does the same mouse shape. It doesn't look beautiful. It's like destroyed. Then there's videos floating around that show an experiment where they took three pots growing rice in water. And well, here's what they did. Now it came back perfect. I wish I saved the video. They had a pot of a growing plant. I think it was a rice plant, three rice plants. And they had three separate jars of water that they would feed these plants. And they would treat one of these waters. Someone would come in and say, "You're disgusting, you're terrible, you're horrible." Another one would act in a different way, a little bit. You're doing okay today, but I wish you're doing better. And then the third water, they went ahead and they gave it love, played good frequency music, and each one of these waters were done separately. Then they fed the water to the plants, and there was drastic difference in the development from the loving to the mid to where the plant that got yelled at and screamed at and told it was awful never truly developed. It was just awful. And the middle one, it kind of developed, but the one that got nurturing got a lot of growth and it did well. So there's a lot in water that I look forward to learning more about. So we'll go back to I think it's very important for people. Well, it's critical for me. As I said, I haven't been sick, knock on wood, in I can't remember the last time. It's been that long. You know, when the COVID thing, no, no. I got Bell palsy when my dog accidentally. I have a 5-year-old Labrador Retriever, Oompa Loompa. I'm surprised he hasn't come up here yet, but he scratched my ear. It got a little infected, and but the Bell palsy only lasted a week and a half, which fortunately I have a very good immune system built up by years of eating right and supplementing right and drinking distilled water. And excuse me a sec. Yeah. Okay. No commercial breaks. Don't get to rest a little bit here. So the next I want to share with you is what happens and what I figured out and why I only drink distilled water. And it isn't because of the pipe necessarily that I just showed you. It has to do with me. I don't want to stop sharing screen, but let me just close this picture. Okay. It stopped sharing, but I'll share again because here's the important part of I get back to my photos. Okay. This is all right. Look, this is a distiller. This is my distiller. If you look in the little picture, that's this right here. I don't distill. I buy distilled water now. I did this for a couple of years, but it's such a pain in the ass because now you see how crystal clear it is. I didn't go and use tap water. I used water from my refrigerator filter. It would have been what you're going to see after the fact is let me stop sharing so I could share again. It's unfortunately the only way I know how to do it. Share it. Okay. So you saw the before. Okay. That's the F. Now, what happens if you don't know, all you're doing in this machine, you know, you see those before I go back to me, everything on the bottom is what's left over after all the water has evaporated. I don't need to show you what I had in my hand. What happens, you're all pretty. And there's you take that thing of water and you heat it and it boils. And all that boiling causes the evaporation and it drips into a container, a gallon glass container that I put underneath the distiller. And what I ended up doing was taking that leftover gunk and putting it under the microscope. Let's stop sharing. So I take that and I go ahead and I put it under the microscope and I'm identifying metal, I'm identifying polymers, which are types of plastics, and other materials in which if I did not distill the water which came through the filter in my machine, and I've experimented not just that's just what I took photos of. I've tried all different methods of uh, going ahead and testing waters through different filtering systems. And I find that distilling is the best. People ask me, well, what about homegrown? If I have a well, I got a lot of questions. If you have a well, your own independent well, you should be clear of all these particulates that you see being collected in those pipes going into your building. Well, but no, not necessarily. As most of you know, they treat water. Let's take back that example I was with you have a well. Well, there are contaminants, like you had the train wreck that in Ohio that spilt all those chemicals into rivers. And this is not the first time. It happens all the time. Most of the time they try to hide it. I think they're still trying to say it's not hurting people, whatever. But there's seepage. There could be seepage, and in I don't know your location. When people ask me the question, "Are wells okay?" You need to have your well water examined and checked to know specifically. And I suggest if you really want to know, I don't trust these centers. Like I wake up one morning, I go to my front door, and I see hanging there a bag with a water test kit that you could go take your water, put it in there, these little test tubes, seal them, and they will test it for you and let you know. Well, that's all a scam. I know it's 100% scam what they're doing because no matter what the results are, now I provide them with distilled water, so there could be zero impurities. There was absolutely none. And they came back giving me the wildest stuff. They were there trying to sell a water reverse osmosis machine. And I just don't, I don't like, I mean, it's better than drinking just tap water. Filters are very good and helpful and effective, but they don't destroy all of the pathogens. And neither does distilling. So hence, I read lots of books. I wanted to really learn how I can make my water clean because there are certain things that the boiling process through distillation can't get rid of. Very small microorganisms that just won't die. So I give it a little kick and they make these things. This is called an ozone generator. And an ozone generator, you see this, this tube gets attached on the bottom. And this part goes into the gallon. You turn it on for a period of time, maybe 10 minutes, and you let it sit in the water, and that basically burns away everything. So I take it beyond the step. Then I like to enhance my water from time to time. When I say enhance it, I like to add methylene blue. I'm not selling brand. I don't represent brands and such. True Social or Tesla, I might, but I'll take methylene blue and occasionally just drink it. It's very good for your mitochondrial connections, for your brain function, for rebuilding those synapses. I would say Mark Sloan wrote a very good book on methylene blue. So it's not a big, thick book, but he goes into the history of when it started and when it stopped. So methylene blue is really great for cognitive improvement. I'm not saying it's a magic pill. You could give it to an Alzheimer's patient and bang, there you go. Now we're getting to the point where certain things in technology that we're going to be able to assist people. That's no doubt. That's why I continue to read. And you caught me, they were talking, I was reading two, I read this book when it came out, I guess 8 months ago. Ray Kurzweil. He is a futurist, and he's right. In all, I had read all his books, and if there's a person that had come from the past and time traveled, it was probably someone like that, because he has presented in his books technologies 30 years before they would happen, and they all occurred. He's not wrong. So I suggest you get that book that's recent because he's telling you what's going to be happening in the next 30 years. And he uses what's going to happen in the next 30 years. He's into technology when it comes to human biology, and he's more on the medicine end of it. But there, so you could read his books, and I've learned a lot. So I suggest giving him a shot at learning. There was another book. Where was so the ozone is something I want to go back to. And I also want to go back a little bit more to the bona fides. But ozone's an amazing material. To I don't have in my home any disinfectants other than ozone. This is a machine you can pick up for $40. This machine, and this machine can clear up 2,000 square feet of space, or it could do a room. Now, when you put one of these machines on, if ozone, briefly, uh, lots of books read on it. If you don't know this, probably in 1901, Nikola Tesla discovered the properties of how it wasn't him specifically. There was someone else before him in the late 1800s that discovered ozone, but Nicole realized and figured out how to use ozone to kill bacteria and disinfect medical equipment and water. In fact, there are some water plants for certain municipalities that do use ozone to clean their water. And it just so happens that the people that live in or work, excuse me, in those factories happen to have a better health record. But it isn't from breathing in ozone. For those who don't know, ozone is just about 2 millimeters thick. It's really, really thin layer above our atmosphere. And it disappears every night. It collapses and dies. As soon as the sun rises, it forms anew again. They try to scare you about ozone because ozone's really, really powerful. Ozone, until proven differently, it will kill any virus, any bacteria known to man. Ebola, it'll cure AIDS, measles, mumps. I mean, it won't cure every disease and it won't cure your cancers, but the experiments that I have read on humans, and it's actually used today. Uh, let's go to some pictures. Oh, this is becoming fun because it's becoming easier for me. So where should we start with ozone? Okay. Ozone. Just a little example. This is ozone. This is it's blue because I actually was experimenting to see how long it would take the ozone to destroy the methylene blue. But I would generally, I would walk around with that container and drink that container, but not all the time. I would do it every once in a while. Stop sharing. All right. So I'm going to go back to sharing so I could get to some of them pictures. I know there's a much easier way to do this stuff. Now, when I say ozone, check this out. Imagine having a swimming pool and you don't have to put in tons of chlorine. This one contraption will filter, purify your pool's water system, and they're inexpensive. It's $300. And I absolutely think it's a necessity if you have a hot tub, if you have a pool, because chlorine, it's not healthy to bathe in chlorine because it gets absorbed into your skin. I mean, when you get out of the swimming pool, in many cases, your clothes are bleached white from all the chemicals. Well, you get an ozone generating purification system attached, you have to use virtually no chemicals whatsoever. And it's a dream. You don't have that smell. Your eyes don't water. Your clothes don't fade. So they make these available. And it's important. So now, with that ozone cleaner, this one that I was showing you, when you turn it on, you leave a room, you can't breathe it in. Now, you don't, it irritates the lungs. It can be very harmful. You never want to breathe in direct ozone air. So you leave a room, shut the door, It's turned on for a period of time, and then you open the windows, fan it out. And what's neat is it kills every bacteria, any smells that you could possibly imagine that were in the room prior to you doing the ozoning. They're dead and they're gone and they disappear. It's finito. So that's really cool. And that's kind of new to me. But ozone is really awesome. And you can use in you could inject ozone. Now, I'm not suggesting you do this, but it's done. I've read it in the books and the case studies. It's unbelievable how effective it is. And I'm going to go back to the pictures to show you, and I'll talk over them. Mm. All right. Now, let's go here. This is called an ozone mixer. What this does is you attach pure oxygen, medical oxygen, and you get that from a medical supply company to you get a tank. It's like a breathing tank for diving. So you put this medical oxygen tank connected to the machine, and you turn the machine on, and you set a certain percent that you want ozone to mix with oxygen. For humans, it's a mixture of 96% oxygen, 4% ozone. So the machine would be set to 4%. The oxygen's connected, and then let me see what happens. I just noticed this. I saw something. See, my dad, since we had my father's in the middle, Theodore Horlick. My uncle, Annie noticed we represented the H.P. Reese Company. He was so young back then. Oh, Dad, that's what I was looking for. Let me see if there's a bigger picture. Now, okay, this is a 60 cc syringe. It's this that gets connected to. I'm going to stop sharing. So and I have 60 cc. I should have brought in. So you take the 66 and it gets screwed into that mixer, and it's set to 96 and 4, and it fills up with this combined mixture. And I'm going back because you then take a butterfly needle for a baby with a long plastic tube, and you connect it to the syringe. You put it in it gets put in your vein, and then over the course of 2.5 minutes, it gets injected into your arm and on your vein. And it feels like champagne, like effervescent, like a bubbly, and it dissipates. And it's amazing how effective it is in curing you of these diseases. Now, here's an interesting thing. That's called a D letter DIV, the DIV, direct intravenous. But that's not the accepted way it's done. And I don't understand why. Instead, they have MAH. I even forget why the acronym stands for because I hate it so much. That's where they draw a pint of blood out of your body. They take a pint of blood. They do the mixture that I just said of 96 outside the body. Often they shine a red light on it, improving it, and then putting it back. And they'll do that a couple of times. That's extremely expensive to the physician performing it when all they could do is for $1. Literally, probably $1, maybe with the needle, $2, oxygen, all that, for $2.50. 160 cc injection into your arm. Instead, they take out all your blood, so they have to throw away all this waste, all the containers that they put the blood in. They all have to be used. Plus, the patient has to watch it, and it takes a long time. When you go the DIV method, which is not accepted. Again, I don't know why, but it costs pennies. And but now we'll get off ozone. The bona fides I wanted to share with you. This is the reason why I want to share this with you is it had to do with the medical community because people say, let me share something interesting with you about myself. I had broken my back. I was confined to by here's the butterfly needle. And now that I saw how this thing works, that's what's attached to the. It's a tiny little needle. It doesn't hurt. We started the Crybaby bubblegum brand. My dad, this is his induction to the Candy Hall of Fame. We started the David Sunflower Seed Company. My father's to the far right. My late great uncle Stanley is in the middle. The guy holding the clock, who's giving us an award, is the head of David and Son Sunflower Seeds, which at the time we were representing them from the beginning was owned by a company called Sunmark. Sunmark also owned Willy Wonka and a few others. But let me continue on. All right, these are my notes, and these are, you notice, drugs all outlined. This all came, oh, this is my genetic condition. This proves that I actually have what I'm telling you. I'm a savant. I just am. My dog, Oompa Loompa, I wasn't expecting to go through. I just read that. Wait, I'm looking for a very specific picture. Uh, the way babies are supposed to be born. Babies are supposed to be born and left like that. You're not supposed to cut the cord. It's a whole show. Again, this show is already way too long, but I could speak for 5 hours on stuff going. Let me just get to the picture that I was looking for. Oh yeah, this is because I grew up in a family that represented the Willy Wonka company. Willy Wonka hired a magician. His name was Jeff Sweet. Go figure. That was his real name, Sweet. His last name was Sweet, and he would dress up in a as Willy Wonka, and he would travel the country, and he would go to the brokers in, like we were the broker in New York. He would come to New York for the day, and my father, in this case, and I would pick him up at the airport, take him into his hotel. Then he would get his outfit on, and then we would take him to a Woolworth because we were selling Woolworths from Diddlyumptious bars and Oompa. There was a product called Oompas, Ompas. So I was enthralled with the movie and magic. So when I was 10 years old, I learned magic and I started doing shows by the time I was 11. Paid shows. I would do shows all around the neighborhood. For I even did a bar mitzvah for someone. We did magic color. Those are the magic color bubble gum. We got that started. That was from Philadelphia Chewing Gum. Oh, me. I went to Africa. This isn't a, this is crazy. I got malaria when I was on this trip. So we're in a restaurant called the Carnivore, and that spear the gentleman is holding contains a wild animal. When you walk into the restaurant, there's this big sign, and on the sign lists all the animals that they're going to bring to your table. And anything that's on the fields of Africa legally allowed is charring on this big flame pit. Let me go back to stop sharing for a second. Okay, so we go in and there's this giant board in it. Everything that you could possibly think of, giraffe, you name it. They'd come and they'd ask you. They'd say what it was, and they'd carve it. And they'd ask you, what is it? Yeah, let me go. There's only one more thing I want to cover with you guys, and I just want to show you a couple of books. And this will be the last time I'm using the computer to switch around. All right. This is what I was looking for. Okay. This was what I found, this is me. Okay, I paid to for the New England Journal of Medicine's Knowledge Center. This is what is used for, if you want to pass the boards, you need to do this completely, uh, get everything right pretty much, and then you need to take the board exams. Now, when you go into pain management or you go into psychiatry, those those areas, uh, let me see if it's here. What will happen is you get a question. They present to you a question, and then you get an A, B, C, D, E, F. And you choose whether, after reading it, what you think is right or wrong. So this was, the answer was A. I happen to have gotten it right, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of what I just, now I'm going to tell you what I discovered, especially in psychiatry and pain medication. Number one, I hated the fact that they did not offer uh, alternatives to relieving pain, as far as the, I know it's not commonplace, but I think marijuana in the form of edibles, because I do not believe in inhaling substances. And it freaks me out to see so many people using these vapors, people my age using vapors. It's just, it's not good for your lungs. I hope I could impress upon you. You're shortening your life. Now, you could eat them and digest them and have a very good effect. Now, I use these. I broke my right, my lumbar spine and my right leg in a fall. And the pain medication was helpful, and I did use it as an adjunct, but I found that the gummy bears were the significant things that reduced the pain, or I should say the cannabis. There's two parts. They sell the CBD. Don't believe that CBD stops pain. CBD doesn't. CBD is good for the people that have conditions in the brain like epilepsy. It calms those nerve centers down, but it's truly the THC portion. And there's really two types of THC, one that'll make you happy and euphoric, and another type. One is indica, and the other is, will come to me in a minute, but you have two types. One type of THC makes you very tired and sleepy and helps you fall asleep. The other is when you have post traumatic stress and you just want to relax and feel comfortable and laugh and not be out of control, but uh, not feel the pain of the situations that you're having to deal with. In my case, it happened to have been my right leg, which I could go into nauseating detail of how I've had two operations on that and two on my lumbar spine because I fell down a flight of stairs and did a number. It took me 6 years. And during those 6 years, I was doing a tremendous amount of reading and taking classes online. I fell in 2016, so 9 years ago. And I am doing so much better uh, today than I didn't know what was going to happen. I was stuck in a bed for years because it was a bad situation for me, unfortunately, but I made the best out of it. And I'm glad it happened because I wouldn't be where I was and learn certain things. And again, it just makes me appreciate life that much more. So back to, pretty much the end. I want to recommend a couple of books, and the first is I read *Pardon of Innocence* by General Flynn, and I liked it a lot. I actually loved it because I've met him several times and spoke with him a couple of times, and I never truly knew his bona fides, his background, what it was like for him growing up. I only knew superficially. And life American Gangsters. He shares the information that I look for. So he talks about his life. So and many of you have gotten to know him from afar and what had happened to him and what is still happening to a degree because there's no resolution. The people that did this need to be punished. So there, you read this book and you learn about the man growing up, his family, his life, and so there are two great reads. American Gangster made me laugh a lot. This one answered questions that I wondered what it was like for him growing up and how did he become to where he was at. He does the exact same thing, but he's a little funnier in the ways, and I look forward to hopefully maybe in the future meeting him. Now, um, I told you about Devin Nunes, and I read the stock reports, and I joined a group on True Social for DJT shareholders, I guess, or people that want to talk about the stock, and I joined it, and I got the inkling. I got the. I If you follow news, you'll realize that Bitcoin Standards, a book you should read. Uh, I believe, based on what has been happening, what Devin's been doing, is what Elon wanted to do. Elon wanted to make X like a banking system. He really he really wanted to do that. That's spelled out in his book. He bought X for that purpose. He had a full outing with the PayPal people, and he looked at Twitter primarily for that. And then later on, possibly other reasons. But from the time of publishing that book, which was, like I said, about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, he had to have been writing the book, maybe even before that. But it really goes into everything about Elon, that Walter Isaacson book. Highly recommend that. But when Devin just recently brought $2.2 billion into the company from 50 different financial institutions, uh, buying of an NFT, a non-fungible. It's actually not. I haven't read enough of the books to explain and know exactly what the company did behind the scenes. I could do the video and tell you what blockchain is and Bitcoin and why it's so secure and why it's the future. But again, it'll take up a whole video. But I feel that that's what I've been reading a lot lately and just learning about this blockchain and future technologies that will help people. And I like now writing reviews about books. I read now. Last year I read 158 books, and I wrote 60 articles, published on all different subjects. But I publish them. You guys never really see them. I publish them just to help, just always improve my writing and share the information, maybe helping someone. Uh, but it's what I enjoy doing, so I'm going to continue to do it. So I'm reading books on mostly now. It used to be for years I was reading just on medicine. Oh, this is the revelation. So when I was doing that test, that I realized that I wasn't agree. They were the New England Journal of Medicine would throw a question up to you and say, what's the best answer? And let's take psychiatry. I'm going back to share picture. Sorry, people, it's a long one. All right, where are you? Are you there? Okay, okay. When I'm doing this, this was my notes for both psychiatry and pain management. Mostly psychiatry, actually, but I shared one folder for both subjects because every time one of those questions came up, because I wasn't seriously trying to take the medical boards, I was trying to see if I could, if I wanted to. I didn't go to medical school. I just read all of the books. I went to medical schools and got the 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 thesaurus for each year of medical school, and I got the books and I read them. And so I didn't have an opportunity to dissect the body, but I'm not afraid to do it. But okay, now here we are in, let's say we're into psychiatry, and I'm doing the psychiatry, and question comes up, and it says something like, it said, okay, a patient comes in complaining of depression and he's been unhappy. It's a 52-year-old male, and they're going through a divorce, and they have some back pain. And what's the best medicine you should choose? And they give you A, B, C, D, and E. Before I would choose the answer, I would look up alprazolam. I'd look up bupropion. I'd look up all of the possible answers. And I was handwriting them at first. As you can see, there's paper underneath the typing. I'm old fashioned. So I would go ahead and look up the five answers and make sure before I chose it, the answer, that I knew I got the right one. So and I actually remember this question. I remember the answer. I found that these weren't the five choices. So let me get off and come back to me. So to go ahead and to I give you this is the back pain, depression, feeling sad. Which medication would you prescribe? And it's not always medication. Sometimes it's counseling, but for the most part, they want you to push a medication and a specific medication. This is where I started to find and said, wait a second, this is why our entire medical community is fucked up. It's because of Big Pharma's influence on the answers. I knew from reading that Paxil was the only medication listed in the many reference books that I looked into that described, and what you saw are paragraphs of what I discovered, each medication, how it works, how it affects. Only one said it's good for the depression and this, and also for pain, body pain. So I choose it and it marks me wrong. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm not wrong. And it tells me what the correct one was. And I go and I look up the correct one again, and it's almost similar, but it doesn't say it does anything to pain, so it's wrong. They give you what's called a challenge button. If they mark your answer wrong, you can challenge the New England Journal of Medicine's Knowledge Center. And I challenged them. I said, it's absolutely wrong. And I just told them what you did in typing. I said it should have been Paxil and the reasons why. And I was finding that this was happening all the time. Not all the time, a lot. It was happening throughout. Give you an idea of how many questions are in psychiatry. There's probably, when I say questions, cases. They give you a case, and then at the bottom there are questions. So they would go ahead. My lips are dry. Excuse me. I should have a little Vaseline. Anyway, so the so I challenge. And I get an email from New England Journal of Medicine. Thank you so much for your I forget their wording. Thank you for letting us know. We appreciate that. But since I kept finding it, I kept challenging them, and I kept getting it right. So they're like a normal person, a normal student who wants to become a physician isn't going to challenge them. What the normal physician wants to do is pass the board exam and get it correct. So they go ahead and they learn the wrong answer. They're being taught the wrong answer and they learn the wrong answer. So they don't do that. The student who's trying to take the board exam isn't going to argue with the New England Journal of Medicine. They might get a little bit here and there, but I was doing a forensic audit in my learning process. I was forensically auditing the entire system to see where the mistakes in medicine are, where they are. Now, I eventually get an email from them which inquires if they could call me and talk to me for a period of time in which they would pay me. And I'm like, sure, sure, absolutely. Yeah. So they make a time and they call me up. It's not a FaceTime call, but it's a talk on the phone. And this is a while ago already. So uh, they start asking me, what, tell us what you think is wrong with the system. I said, well, it's obvious that your answers are being influenced by the pharmaceutical companies because you're telling doctors and training them to choose a specific medication rather than the best medication. Now, I don't approve of in psychiatry of any of them. But wait, let me see. I have a book here that I'll recommend. Uh, I don't know where. Toxic Psychiatry by that's the part of me that's a savant. I just like have to find the answer. It's difficult sometimes to give up, but you know what? I found another way. Where is he? Ah, uh, Toxic Psychiatry by Bragan. Uh, Ginger and I forget the husband's name. Anyway, so toxic psychiatry. He goes into all. Peter Bragan, Dr. Bragan, as a psychiatrist who put an end to lobotomies, and it was that's a barbaric as well as electric shock therapy. The way they did it, it was barbaric, and it was because of him. So he publishes this book years ago, Toxic Psychiatry, when all these drugs were coming out. And he's the first person who sounded the alarms about the negative impact of these serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And that's why I like the THC and I like the psychedelics. I am all for the psychedelics. I have a certification I took a class at UC Berkeley School of Psychedelics. It's a real thing. And they go into the sciences and how they developed and each thing from LSD to MDMA, so on and so forth. It's the natural things that are good and helpful. That as well as talk therapy. That's the number one thing missing in psychiatry is having someone who's intelligent, a psychiatrist who will give you time so that you could speak and he could or she could listen and give you feedback. It's through the speaking process that you're able to eventually, if you choose to disclose what's bothering you or to get to the root of where your traumas are coming from, it's through talking about it and or journalizing it and maybe talking about it. But I found that talking is a great therapy, and it helps understand when you take a pill, it's messing with you. It's not getting to the root of the problem. The only way you could get the root to a psychiatric problem of depression and such, there's no such test that could measure your body chemicals. So whenever you're hearing uh, they have a chemical imbalance, that's bullshit, because there's no way they know. If there's no test you could take to say, okay, you have an imbalance, it doesn't work. So my way and understanding from learning, I dealt and learned from, I feel for me, was the best psychiatrist around. And I went my first year, I paid out of pocket because I wanted to learn psychiatry. So I went my first year, I went like 3 times a week, and I would go there trying to learn and understand how I think and how I perceive things. And when I went that often, so I was in a family business, I wanted to learn how to separate my feelings from my father as my father and also my boss. I wanted it to be a very healthy relationship, and as well as all of my relationships. So I felt like by going often during that first year, anytime I was feeling my emotions going around, I would have a chance to be able to talk about it. So over a year, since I went I didn't go every week 3 times. Sometimes it was twice a week. It was also very expensive. And I thanked my parents. I told them, in lieu of a college education, uh, let's do this. I really want that. And I have to do for my children what my parents did for me, and plus. And I am so grateful. They'll never see this, unfortunately, but it's important for me to say it. I'm so grateful that they gave me the opportunity to be able to learn how to think, and going to one, and it took me to find someone who I it took me 3 different psychiatrists, short times. I went like just a couple of times to one, a couple of times, until I found Dr. Eugene Becker, MD, PC, out of Great Neck. Don't call him, because he's probably now also like 89, 90 years old. And he's practicing, I bet. I think the last time I looked, he's still in practice. And I remember his phone number because we talk often. And so I would bring my problems, and he would be great in making analogies and helping me understand why I was thinking a certain way, because over a period of time of going and talking about it, he would be able to pick up on certain patterns of how I was perceiving things that I wasn't perceiving. And he would share with me. And often he would share it with me by using an analogy so it would sink in. And I share a funny story, and I have in the past, how in ice cream flavors was is a great way to describe people's personalities. And like there was a time I went into I was feeling disappointed that a certain girl didn't like me, and he gave me an analogy of Baskin Robbins ice cream, and he said, Jeff, there's 31 flavors of Baskin Robbins. What's your favorite flavor? And I said, tell him peanut butter and chocolate. It should be a no-brainer to you, because look, I grew up with HB Reese's in the house. Not a piece of HB Reese's candy bars were in my house growing up. I love peanut butter and chocolate. So I'm a peanut butter and chocolate guy. I could appreciate lots of flavors. I could appreciate people who like mint chocolate chip and Oreo and stuff. But there's a certain flavor I just don't like rum raisin and coffee. I just don't like those flavors. It has nothing to do with the flavors. And that's the thing that I learned. I'm peanut butter and chocolate, and there's other people that will like peanut butter and chocolate. If this woman, didn't like me, it's just because she likes mint chocolate chip, and she's looking for her mint chocolate chip. And when I meet someone who is not my particular cup of tea, I could appreciate them, but everyone has their individual flavors and such. And I learned that through going through psychiatry. So back to the testing and this doing this New England Journal of Medicine thing. So I go ahead, finish finish up talking to them, and I said to them, you know, patients don't get enough time with their doctors. They're rushed. They're rushed through. In addition to what I already told you about the pharmaceutical, instead of doing anything about the pharmaceutical, on February 9th of a certain year, I have an article. I said in the conversation, I'm jumping around, that the doctors don't truly understand what the patient's going through, and the patients don't understand what the doctors are going through and why it takes them so long to see the patients. And I said, it's all screwed up. So they wrote and I have a copy of it. I just wasn't prepared. I didn't know where we were going to go today. So they printed based on what I told them a cartoon. I think it's a 5-page cartoon showing a doctor and bubbles about a doctor who can't get to the appointment and a patient who doesn't understand, and how this cartoon was supposed to help the physicians who are reading New England Journal of Medicine understand why the patients are sometimes so frustrated. And it didn't. I wanted them to fix the system the way Robert Kennedy is hopefully doing what I want him to do. Um, and you don't know, I I really would like to work in the administration. I have never made it a secret that I feel that based on my experiences and my ability to learn, that's where my that I'm lucky. I have this mutation. I'm just able to learn stuff and very, very rapidly. It's very, very quick. And after my fall, I ended up closing my business in 2000, I believe, 9, because there was just no need for brokers. There was no money really to be made in that area. And I had this terrible accident that I had to have 4 operations and recover from. And the brokerage businesses are, you don't buy the product, you represent the company, and you you sell the product on behalf of the manufacturer. And in the cases of supermarkets, we would arrange for advertising, and we would do private label products like chocolate chips, private label hard candies, and we represented manufacturers, and we would get a percentage of commission, like let's say 5% of whatever A&P bought, whatever King Cullen or Stop and Shop would buy. We would get a commission after Stop and Shop paid their bill, 5% of whatever they bought. That was a typical commission. So you would have to sell truckloads. So I I had to sell to earn $50,000. I would have to sell $1 million worth of Spice Girl lollipops. So I had to sell many truckloads and bubble gum, which I did. One of the neat things, I sat on a lot of board of directors of manufacturers. We represented probably in candy company at any one time 35 different candy or candy novelty companies and related consumer products like drinks, the sport shakes. And Sport Shake was huge. We built it from nothing to $6 million a year, and eventually was bought by Borden. And that's what happened with Reese's. See, what I learned from my father and my late great uncle is that very often what would happen is H.B. Reese was making Reese's peanut butter cups privately, and he was buying his chocolate from Hershey, where he had worked. The owner of H.B. Reese worked. I mean, not HB. Yes, the HB Reese Peanut Butter Company worked at Hershey for quite a while. And his factory was in Pennsylvania. He had a lot of failures before he came up with the peanut butter cup. But he couldn't make chocolate. You need a pretty big scale operation to go ahead and make chocolate, especially HB Reese for these peanut butter cups. he owned machinery that he would buy his chocolate from Hershey, and then he would melt it over his peanut butter cups. He had his own peanut butter cups that he made, and he had the machinery to package it, but he would buy chocolate from Hershey. And when we started representing them, it wasn't an easy sell. People didn't rush to buy the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup when we introduced it back in the very late 20s, early 30s. It was my father had to go to different stores, large format retailers that they were able to sell, and the HB Reese would provide samples. These are the things that I said were in my house growing up. So my father would hand out samples of Reese's peanut butter cups when he was younger. And at this location, hoping they would buy a case or a box and bring it back to the store for resale. Eventually, over years, it became such a big popular brand. Hershey's was very concerned that Nestle's, another chocolate maker, would approach the HB Reese company and offer them chocolate at a lower price. See, they could do that because Nestle's was made out of the country, and they could make the chocolate for a much lower price than Hershey's, and they didn't have to pay tariffs or anything on the chocolate coming in. So Hershey's, out of concern that Nestle's would now, HB Reese was a big customer buying these industrial 50-pound chocolate bars, which they used to melt. They made HB Reese an offer to buy the business. And that was in 1969. I was 3 years old, I think. Uh, yeah. So eventually it fell under the umbrella. The HB Reese fell under the umbrella of the Hershey. Now, that's what happened, and why I realized you could build brands. And like I built Sport Shake, and my father experienced building the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup brand and to have it taken away. So he worked so hard, but due to no fault of his own, they lost that line. Fortunately, they were representing Frizola's and many other candy companies. But you take a hit financially when you lose a big customer like Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. But they got a nice little package going out for that because they represented them for 30 plus years. So the moral of the story is that the my life has been very interesting. Really a fascinating life that certainly is much different today than ever. I realize we're really long, so I guess going even a little bit longer is no big deal. To say that the things that changed my life so much were the worst that happens. Having salmonella poisoning when I was in third grade. I didn't have the, now I have veins. I'm very vascular. I have very low body fat, I guess. I just you see my muscles everywhere. So I didn't have that when I was a young boy, third grade, and I had salmonella poisoning. I was sick and I was dying. The doctors didn't know what to do with me, so they had to send me to the hospital. And I get into the hospital, they put me in a wheelchair before they give me a room, and I'm sitting in a wheelchair, and they're trying to put an intravenous line in me, but because you had deep veins, they couldn't get it in, and that's a traumatic experience. Now, that's not something you take medication the rest of your life for, but it's something that's traumatic that lasts with you and forced me to say, I want to be healthy and never be sick again. And I thought I was doing a really good job, but then I got malaria. And I did take the precautions. I think because four of us went, my mother, my father, my sister, and I went, and we all had to go and have an injection I did not want the injection. I didn't want to travel to a place where you had to get an injection. I feared needles from that salmonella poisoning. I always hated it. I hated getting the finger prick. But I was forced. My mother and father forced. They really forced me to go. I couldn't say no. They were supporting me in my the my going out to Arizona, which I really didn't get into, but I played football there for a period of time, 1987. Then came back to after 1 year, uh, one semester. Uh, and it's a long story, but I played a semester there, then moved into Brooklyn, right across from the Brooklyn Museum. We owned 201 Eastern Parkway. It's right on the corner of Washington and Eastern Parkway. If you're familiar with Brooklyn, that's where the Brooklyn Museum is across the street. So I lived in 201 Eastern Parkway when I left Arizona instead of my parents' house on Long Island. In Get this, it was a doctor's office. There was a doctor on the first floor who had an unrented place. It wasn't a typical studio or typical one bedroom or two bed. It was an old doctor's office that was on the ground floor. They had bars on the windows, and I was very close with my late great uncle Milton. No relation to Milton Igus. Oh, I'm sorry, to Milton Hershey. Milton Igus was my late great uncle. So I moved into Brooklyn, and with the deal that I was close. I didn't, and I mentioned this earlier, have any grandparents growing up. They had passed away before I was gone. So I had this uncle, late great uncle Milton, I guess, who was in the real estate. He was part of the family, my mother's side of the family, who was in that installment business, the loan sharks. And what they did was, again, as I wasn't clear at the beginning, they would take immigrants who had no money and they would go to the store with the person so that they could get the necessities they needed. And the store owners trusted David, who I mentioned earlier, my mother's, my great great grandfather. They These store owners trusted that he kept a ledger. The store owner would give the items to the person, and my great great grandfather and eventually other family members, all were in this installment business, would go and collect. Either they would come my to my great great grandfather and the family business and pay, or they would go collect and they would give to the store the money that it cost. And what the store owner did was he just basically upped it a certain percentage, whatever the price was, and that was what my family earned. Eventually, credit cards came around. And when credit cards came around, there was no really their business, like I described earlier, cold trucks, ice trucks, even the brokerage business. Well, there was really no need for these installment companies and these, loan sharking. Now you have big companies producing credit cards. So he was very intuitive and smart, my great great grandfather. And as people, the family members he put into the business, as they were coming over, he was here, as you know, after World War One, but during World War One, and stayed and in Brooklyn, and that's where his rest of his family, they all moved in to Brooklyn, and they came to him. He was a big, strong, smart guy, hardworking, and he put everyone into this business. And eventually, people would leave the business, but he forced everyone. He told everyone, "Well, you we're going to be buying the buildings no, we're living in." He sort of, I wasn't there. So this is second story. They bought the building they lived in. Each someone in the family had a percentage. Whatever they put in towards the percentage of whatever they earned, they owned that percentage of that building. So they eventually accumulated quite a lot of these are only residential apartment buildings that were 75 unit families or larger. And they would eventually not even need that business of the installment because now they were generating income from the buildings, from the rents that they would collect from the buildings they own. And it would be split up amongst the number of shares that people had. So I worked in the business for 2 years to totally understand everything. And I worked in all of the construction, the acquiring of land, the acquiring of projects, the meeting with all the department officials within the New York City government to get permits, to get things approved, and worked on the job site from the beginning. And I picked out a building from the back of the New York Times. That's how my late great uncles. Milton had a twin brother. They weren't identical, but they were twins nonetheless. And Milton taught me that you just look in the back of the New York Times on Sunday, and in the real estate section in this area, they Housing Preservation and Development (HPD) would place buildings that were owned by the government because of how I explained earlier, defaults or whatever, and were uninhabitable. They were boarded up. No, the rent wasn't being collected, so they would kind of auction them off through this request for proposal thing. So throughout the 60s and 70s, tons of residential apartment buildings and other properties became abandoned. The changes of people that were living there just uh, there were slumlords that just milked their buildings, and it was a mess. So they were scattered throughout the five boroughs of New York. These dilapidated buildings, all boarded up with HPD painted on the boards that were covering the windows and the doors that had the chain. And I would look at the back of the New York Times for advertisements that showed any residential apartment buildings that had that needed 50 or more families. And I found, I believe it was 250 Ocean Avenue. This is a long time ago. We're talking 1987. So 1988, 1988, 89. So and 89 and a half. I was there 2.5 years. So I found a project, and then Milton and the rest of the team, we had this guy, John Poole, who was in the finance. He didn't work in the company, he was one of the partners. The partners had this office at the same building I was living in, 201 Eastern Parkway. So I was on one side of the building. It was a huge building, two elevator building, perhaps 225 families, give or take. Um, and I was on one side where the doctor's office, and on the completely other side, the office for the real estate was like a giant 3 bedroom apartment converted to an office. And there was a lot of action going in and out of that. And there was this guy, John Poole, who was my mentor he worked for the Community Preservation Corporation, CPC. They would give you the interim loan for the project, like the 250 Ocean Avenue. They would give I would go to the city, pick up what's called the request proposal, what I saw in the New York Times being offered. So I would pay the sum of money. I went down, it's Broad Street, right in Manhattan, underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. I'd go pick up the packet, the RFP, and then bring it back to the office, open it up, and start reading through it, what the requirements were. Like you would have to have 60% moderate income, 40% low income. You needed to have this number of families living in it. So they would have all sorts of requirements. But what they didn't tell you in the request for proposal in how to win the projects were the secrets that the partners taught me. I'm a young guy. I'm what 20 years old at 21, and I'm being taught and doing things that people go to college for to try to hope to get the job to get this position. So I I learned from we had a construction specialist, we had a finance specialist, we had an accountant, and I worked with everyone to learn everything about the business. So if anything happened, I could step in and help. And my fun was in acquiring the jobs and also uncovering embezzlement. I uncovered enormous embezzlement, not from my family members, but we found that to win certain projects, you need to bring in certain minority contractors. They looked favorably upon you if you had a minority contractor, if say someone doing security and or construction work. It shouldn't be that way, but they did. They forced you to bring in. So they bring in this person who was a painter and didn't have the money to do this, but they would bring him in and he would be a partner. And if he was 25% partner, my the twin brothers were partners, and this guy Mike Schindel was a partner, and so I think there were four partners. I didn't have any ownership to 250 Ocean Avenue. It was these guys, but they were allowing me and teaching me and showing me, and I just learned so much. And but my Milton, my close confidant, and before I tell you what happened is my day started at 5:30 in the morning, and I would go across the street from 201 Eastern Parkway by the museum would be the subway, and I would take the subway to down to Front Street in Brooklyn. It was a short ride, but I'd go in shorts because I belonged to Gleason's. My late great uncle got me a trainer. His name's Hector Roca, and he paid for a locker. And the deal was every morning I'd train with this Hector, I'd work, learn the art of boxing, the science of it, and I loved it because it's a long story. I really like to uh, punch. In addition to talking, I find that hitting the punching bag, doing the speed bag are outlets that just add to the overall sense of well being that I have. You see, there's the talking part, there's writing down, there's the physical things like working out, and then there's a lot of things. Hypnosis helped me a lot, learning self hypnosis to keep my focus straight and be able to set my mind to a specific goal and then achieve that goal. And knock on wood, I've been pretty successful. The big one is the age thing. We'll see how that works out. But I think I kind of answered the question on the, you know, issue of the water stuff. And I don't know if I'm ever going to make another video. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I, I, I just finished reading another. The future is faster than you think. How converging technology are transforming businesses, industries, and our lives by Peter Diamond and Stephen Kotler. It's really great, and it's all to an end. I want to understand the future as best as I can. So, um, understanding Bitcoin was really important to me. I didn't write a review yet. I finished that 3 days ago, and then I did. So I read Flynn's book yesterday, the Bitcoin Standard the day before. The day before that, I did the FinTech, and now I'm doing the future of this. And I could do this the rest of my life. I could just continue learning, but it. I want to practically help people. I mean, what good am I serving just reading books all day and having knowledge and being able to assist people in so many different ways? I'm great at puzzles. I love figuring things out, and I always have lots of ideas and thoughts, and uh, I'm not. I share them, and lots of times people steal them. Like, let me see if I have this. In again, see this, the missing person. This is the kid from uh, the movie, vampire movie, The Lost Boys. All right. That's the kid from The Lost Boys. That's not a real one. That's just a mock-up of what used to be. I'm all for the children. It's so important, and I want the educational system across the board changed. Not only the medical community needs to change completely, the educational system needs to change completely. I agree with like the Tom Rowe way. You need to not force people to have to learn in a certain way and make a curriculum that's so narrow and strict. You have to have options uh, besides everyone has to be this cookie cutter mold. You know, the doctors, they all have to practice in the same way. They all have to pass that test that same way. And education, people, we all learn differently. We all learn in different ways. Visually, we learn phonetically, and people are good at some things and not good at others. And I think that I know that children should be given the opportunity to be able to uh, go to school and learn. And if it's not a traditional school, that it's a type of school that's a trade school that can teach them the way it used to be. And I'm not send it back to the states, let the states develop programs and for people to be into different industries rather than to get into a college. It's like the whole thing for people to be successful would get into college. You need to get that's today's educational system. They want to indoctrinate you. And I see the changes. And I'm trying to help Linda McMahon the best I can to see what her message is, what she's doing. She's out there a lot. She's speaking a lot, and I she's on True Social. I haven't connected with her yet. She has very few followers. She's on X, but she's on TV a lot. Um, but our educational system, both not just they through all levels, medical schools have to change. They must. The truth about lots of things need to be revealed relating to medicine. Like what I shared with you about ozone, you could go look it up and do the research. I'm right; they don't cure any disease, and there's so many other things that will change in our lifetime. When I was telling you earlier about Ray Kurzweil, um, that he went ahead and he discusses the human biologies of the future and technology. And I think that a lot of people are frightened when they hear about Neuralink and they hear about the technology because of nefarious uses in the past of technology. And people are very frightened, and rightfully so. Um, I haven't touched on COVID and the vax issues. I'll mention quickly my aunt died a couple of months ago, uh, hastened by the injection. Every single family member that got the shot has been injured, some much more severely than others. There's no one that in my family, and there's almost everyone except my son and I, who has not had either died or been significantly severely impaired in some way. And I did a lot of work, a lot of studying on what what was the cause and what problems were there. And I think that all of my reading and studying isn't just the books. I'm also subscribed to a lot of Substacks, and I read them. I could read really, really fast and retain the information. So I, wherever I end up, I think uh, I'm going to be happy no matter what. I believe I can't, people do things, and of course, I get unhappy. I'm not happy all the time. Actually, most of the time, I'm not really happy. I'm never satisfied. I'm always trying to go on further to learn more. And sometimes it's difficult because I like to train. I like to work out, and I can't work out to the same degree that I used to because I'm much older than I used to be. But that's not it. It's because of the injuries that I told you about, where my lumbar spine, I have a metal cage, lots, of levels in my lumbar, one, two, three, four levels that are all clamped up, and it had to be. It wasn't a choice. Um, and my right leg completely destroyed, so I can't sprint anymore. I can't jump and play basketball. And I've accepted those things, but they're very difficult to accept when you lose the ability to do the thing, one of the things that you love so much. But I'm still able to work out. So these days I'm working out just as I've always had because I want to live a healthy life. But I understand a lot of people are having a very difficult time. My life is very, very difficult, extremely difficult. And I don't share that with you now because, it's my issues that are all going to be okay. I'm very optimistic. Like I mentioned, my aunt passing away, there's more than just she who's passed away. I have empathy, sympathy, and all those feelings. And I love people. I absolutely love. And I would love to be with a person, a beautiful person, and be able to spend my life with. But I'm realistic. I don't count on that. I don't even think about it. I just mentioned it because I want you to know I'm heterosexual. I love women, but I'm not going to be tricked or seduced or brought in. And I don't sleep on the first date. I don't even kiss on the first date because I want to get to know people. Now, this wasn't me always when I was much younger and in high school. We all change and develop and learn from about our experiences. And a lot of the experiences that I described to you have changed and me as a person. But I'm still peanut butter and chocolate. I'll always be. I want to mention another book. This is Voodoo. This is Voodoo in Sawdust City. Let me let you know. Recommend it. I want to recommend this. This this book was written by, as you can see, Boone Cutler. I loved it. And the reason I loved it was for the same reason that I loved General Flynn's and Cash Patel's. Because in this book, Boone doesn't hold back. He shares with you what happened to him during war and what he experienced. And he brought the battlefield to life and the after effects and what it was like working with interpreters that were helping, that were eventually killed for helping, and the wounds that he had from explosions that caused different effects on the brain. And I I found the book to be fascinating. And he writes, if you don't know him, all the books with General Flynn, and these are great books too. I found all the books to be fabulous. Um, just I'll give you a guess. I read a couple of books on thorium energy. I predict that that's going to be something in our futures. You could take a thorium reactor about the size of a container ship, and thorium is it's like nuclear power, but it doesn't have the inherent danger that the uranium and the cost. Thorium is a golf ball size of thorium could produce enough power to generate a person to live 150 years. I'm just giving an example. that just a golf ball size of thorium, and it's so inexpensive, thorium compared to uranium. And they've been able to create these salt reactors that are not dangerous, but they're not yet mass produced. That you see, like if you know Elon and why I own Tesla, is because I read and I understand that he's going to be putting out a phone. If you don't know this, he's going to be putting out a phone by the end of this year that has a battery life of 7 days. Compare that to Apple's best, I think, is 29 hours. I I could go into why you should probably buy the stock if you can afford it, both DJT and the others for different reasons. But the it's I'm trying to give a couple of, like, as we're ending, some positive things. Tesla's they have an iPad coming out at the end of this year and a phone. And it's going to cut the cost of communications. We are all tied into these. There hasn't really been many choices outside of Apple, and they have this cloud. And Tesla, they have it already, this new phone. Well, the battery life 7 hours, it could handle any of the applications that you have on Apple, and you pay one time and you have Starlink. You could get good reception everywhere. And it's only going to cost $175 for the phone, one phone, where it costs anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for an Apple phone. So, and then after the phone and the iPad, you have this Optimus robots. And a lot of the technology that I'm reading is you are going to be blown away as you live and see in the years ahead how much the technology is going to assist people that have disabilities or needs of all sorts. Embrace it, learn about it, don't fear it. I understand that there are certain reasonable fears to have because of COVID and that whole debacle. And I know that a lot of people are injured, and there are certain things people can do to improve their health. That people, they should make, if I was Robert Kennedy or President Trump, I would advise them to make sure that blood tests include metal screenings across the board. All metals should be part of everyone's blood test, and it should be no charge. It's very important, no charge. It should be under everyone's insurance policy, because there are so many problems that people have because they have been exposed to toxic metals and chemicals. Chemicals is a different thing than metals. But once we start talking about metals, that's the easy one to fix. When quantum dots. I mean, if you read she have transhumanism around here. Where's my transhumanism? Jeez. Here. Okay. You guys, you might know Anna Malika. We've spoken a couple of times. If you read a book like Transhumanism, and you start seeing and hearing about the different chemicals and things that they're finding under high magnification, but yet they can't identify exactly what it is. Some things they can, like quantum dots. They are finding quantum dots that can be taken out of the body through EDTA chelation therapy. Intravenous EDTA chelation therapy will get metals out of the body. Good ones too, so they got to replace it. It's a process. But people that have been injured and people that have cancers, be optimistic, because if you start doing research, if you knew what I knew, I don't fear the cancer at all. Not in the least. If it is, I'll deal with it. And I have so many different ways and I mean, you have my, and there's so many more on the way. Again, I could go on and on and on. I guess when you go to a psychiatrist, I stopped seeing them a long time ago. But when you go, I guess maybe you learn if you want to learn to be able to communicate and talk and speak. You can. But I was always comfortable, like you saw at the age of 10. I first started performing in the magic shows in the basement of my home, and then when I saw how much kids loved it and came around, and that's when I decided, hey, I'll go into business. I'll make money doing it. And there was candy and all the tricks, just like Willy Wonka. And I want to thank you for taking the time to either make a comment, to like. I don't know whether you don't have to like it. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to watch. Uh, what can I say? I am always trying to be a gentleman and nice, and I want to thank you. If you did watch this from beginning to end, God bless you. I don't know if I would have the patience to listen to myself if I'm not, I can't perceive myself. I could watch other people, but maybe you find me interesting, maybe you don't. I think for the most part you do because I think I get some views. I get views and comments on my Rumble site. So and I get followers on True Social when I share stuff. So it's enough for me. I'm pleased. I'm glad I had an opportunity after a year to come back to be able to kind of give you an update on some things that have been going on in my life. And I want to thank you for all your support. When you follow me on a different on a site, I'm very grateful, and I thank you. And lastly, I'm going to say, God bless you and your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, the people that are important to your life, and your pets. I wish only the best of health and good things and a great future for all of us. And if you ever have a question, feel free to ask it. Best place is True Social because that's where I'm at. I like it. It's fun. I am on X and Getter and Gab because and LinkedIn. Actually, if you really want to know my background, like I said earlier, you go on LinkedIn. It's really comprehensive. My education, my stuff, and I will maybe see you again, in the future. And on that note, where we go one, we go all worldwide to peace and victory. We're almost, there. So much has happened recently. We'll turn on the news later or read something in the news later and just be, I'm always amazed. I don't watch the news very much. I do read some things because I spend time learning and I enjoy it and working out and the rest of everything else is private. So y'all take care. Thanks. Love you. Have a good night, good day, and over and out for this show.